everybody. Thank you very much. This is the Sandwich Town Council Heritage and Townscape Committee meeting. It's the first one since the election. So item number 1 on the agenda is to elect a chair. Are there any nominations, please, for a chair for this committee?
I'd like to propose Councillor Anderson.
I second that.
There we go.
And so we have pros and a second. Everybody happy to vote? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That's very nice. I wonder, because it's very difficult for me to see you, if you could, if you
Let's
could
move round. Let's move round.
a bit.
Yeah.
One of these days we'll get this one together. But you don't
Don't want
have
to
our
the
backs
idea of
covered.
seeing us.
You're all right, Ian.
That's right.
Ian, they can see you.
Councillor Anderson, while they're doing that, can I just say, if I'm allowed to, that as to be noted on the minutes for the townscape, and I will say at full council at the end of the month, that heartfelt thanks to go to the Sandwich Community Events Association for their fantastic weekend of the weekend. My personal thanks goes to Councillor Mallet and Councillor Morehouse for their work that they've done over the weekend. Mr Mayor, I'm sure you agree with me that it was a brilliant weekend. Lots of people in the town, and it was very enjoyable. So, if I'm allowed to put that on.
Yes, I think that's, I presume the committee agrees with that.
Yeah.
It's a terrific occasion. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Item 2. I was going to make some remarks if I were elected. And the first is to welcome the new committee, because this is a fairly new committee, and Councillors Black, Councillor Carter, in his capacity as Mayor, is now Deputy Chair of this committee, but new to it. Councillor Suka, Councillor Mallet and Councillor Ripley, welcome. And I will confess to devising this agenda along with the interim town clerk. And part of its purpose and the large amount of papers and documents that have been attached is to inform the new members of the committee what's been going on until now. The Heritage and Townscape Committee is fairly new. It only started meeting in October after the committee restructuring, and we do meet once a month. And so far we have found plenty of business. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence.
No apologies received.
No apologies. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests from members in respect to business on this agenda. Item 4, to consider co-optees. Now, if you look at the minutes of the last meeting, which are attachment 1, we can have up to 3 co-optees, and we did at the last meeting have 3 suggestions. One was Carol George, who is here. The second was Anne-Marie Hugan. In her capacity as market manager. Since the markets come under this committee, it seemed appropriate. And the third was Keith Heaven or somebody from the Sandwich Environment and Conservation Group. And the suggestion was that Keith Heaven might do it, since there would then be continuity about waterways, because he was chair of the waterways group. I don't know, Town Clerk, whether you've talked to Keith Heaven, because we did.
No,
Okay,
no,
and I haven't either, I'm afraid. So I think it's probably known by now that Anne-Marie Hugan has resigned as market manager. So I think we might have to, well, I'm sure we do actually have to rethink that if we want somebody to represent the market view on this committee. So I think perhaps we should vote first of all for Carol George, see whether Carol has the support to be co-opted. Councillor Tonga. So I propose Carol George.
I second that.
Okay, shall we all vote?
Thank
I
you.
think that's overwhelming, so I think we can go on with that. Thank you. Then, as far as representation to speak to concerns about the market is concerned, I did wonder about Andy Stiles, see whether he would be willing. I mean, it's only cropped up today really that we need somebody from that end of our business to be here. Councillor Reid.
May I make a suggestion? Would you like me to have a conversation with him beforehand and we speak about it next month?
Yes, if we're willing to wait, because that would put it off for 2 months. Well, perhaps you could communicate with Andy.
Yeah.
And talk to the town clerk. And do we agree in principle that?
Could I have a
Yeah,
question
sorry.
about it? Would he be a temporary appointee until we get a market manager? Because we will be recruiting a new market manager, and he could be a candidate as the new market manager.
Yeah.
In which case he would continue to serve on this committee. I'd be quite happy with that. But in the initial point, can we just make it a temporary
Question.
law? Because we
Well,
do need a
that's
market manager. don't
Well, I mean, we've had a debate in this committee about whether we're appointing to represent organisations or whether we're appointing individuals. And I think in the case of Carol, it's probably both. The town team and the fact that you're a major giver, as it were, to the town and Sandwich and Bloom. As far as the market representation is concerned, then that question is, again, are we appointing the individual and or as a representative of an organisation? And really, I have no advice.
Right. I'm just going to say, just to continue, if you may, Chair, is obviously if we appoint Andy Stiles and then we appoint a manager, a market manager thereafter, would we have both of them on the committee, or would we? Because I was hoping we would have a market manager on the committee when it's
I think
appointed.
that's sensible, actually. Carol?
Interim.
What about someone like Steve Lasler?
Sue Laslett?
Steve Lasler.
Steve Laslett.
If I may, I spoke to Steve Laslett a few times. He's not willing to be on any committees at the moment, only a working group for the Guildhall Square.
Well,
so can we not appoint? Sorry, not appoint. Ask Andy
Yeah.
if he's willing to sit on this committee, and on the basis it will be reviewed at the point that we might have a new market manager in post. And if Andy's comfortable with that, then that just gives us the cover for now, and then we can make a decision at a later point.
Exactly.
that's very helpful. Okay, so would you like to propose that, Eric?
Yeah, I'll propose.
As long as I don't have to repeat it.
No. So Councillor Carter is second, please. And shall we all vote? Okay. And Dean, you'll talk to.
I'm going to have a conversation with him
Yeah,
soon
that's
after
very
this
good.
meeting. Can I just ask, sorry, Councillor Longson, about regarding DDC representation? Obviously, we've got Councillor Morehouse in the gallery. What's regarding? Do they have an open invitation, or do they have to be co-opted into the Townscape Heritage?
No, they don't have an open invitation, and we would have to go on.
Right.
Councillor Carter.
Oh yes, also, this committee is called Heritage Committee, and I was hoping that somebody from a heritage background would be co-opted onto this committee. I'm not too sure. I have asked Millie, our museum supervisor. I believe the town clerk will probably update me, but she's not too keen, is she?
I think it's something that she would like to consider, but at the moment, at the present time.
Yes, she told me she isn't interested.
Would it not be unusual for an officer to be co-opted onto a committee? Anyway, that's beside the point.
If not, then I was wondering whether somebody from the History Society could be co-opted onto the committee. John Hennessy is obviously an excellent choice, but if John Hennessy didn't want to do it, there's a very good panel of people from the History Society, because we are Heritage and Townscape, so it'd be good to have somebody with the...
Could we just wait to see if we hear that from Keith Devon? We did
I
want
think
Keith Devon.
we need some continuity with the water.
Just with the waterways,
Yes.
very important.
Councillor Black.
First of all, I know the Tollbridge Fund is a separate entity, but nevertheless there is a Museums and Archives Committee that's going to be set up, I understand, and certainly Milling will be part of that. So I'm not sure that they add the contribution here. In terms of the History Society, some of us are already members of the History Society and are town guides.
Yes, I do feel heritage is really quite well represented within this committee.
I would agree.
Okay, so is that all clear? Right, the minutes, item 4
Yes.
continues to be minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee. And some of you were on that committee, but I think most of you weren't. But those of you that were, presumably have the right to vote about them.
Yes. Yes. And actually, anyone has the right to vote. It's not just restricted to people who are physically there. So that's fine.
Okay. So do you accept the minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee as attachment
Could
1?
I just question the town clerk about the
Yes.
validity of that? If somebody didn't attend a meeting, so they didn't actually know what happened at the meeting,
Yeah.
how are they able to authorise the minutes?
So they can agree the minutes, because hopefully they might have looked at the recording. But if they want to choose to abstain, that's absolutely acceptable as well. That's what normally happens. But there's nothing wrong with actually voting in favour or against the minutes,
Even if you hadn't been there?
Yeah. You know.
And could I just ask a point whilst I wasn't there, so therefore will abstain from this? There were a couple of recommendations within those minutes, and I just wanted to ask how they will feature in terms of making sure that their progress reported against. So I'm just worried that we have meetings, we document things, and then they stay in the past rather than living.
Yeah. So there is a table for resolutions. Obviously, since I've started, there's a huge amount of work to be done, and I have to confess that the resolution table, I haven't actually had an opportunity yet to look at that in detail. There are bits and pieces that have been covered, but I know that there is a lot of ground to go over. But the capacity at the moment with everything that's the staff numbers, we just don't have capacity to action on these things in the minutes as quickly as we would like. So that is something obviously we need to address going forward once there is restructure and everything settles down and we have more staff.
So would you, sorry to labour the point, so would you easily and certainly identify these as outstanding actions? If not, would it not be sensible to bring them into the minutes of this meeting as recommendations that are brought forward and still in view?
Well, can I say, I don't know if you're particularly looking at
Sorry, I should be specific. 0323.5.
Yes, I'm looking at those two. And I had made a note to myself that we should consider the telephone boxes and engaging with the museum coordinator and volunteers at this meeting. So it remains on that part of the resolution.
That was my concern as well. Concerned at some of the things that I've heard when I've been to the museum about the Tourist Information Centre, and it was not an easy meeting that I attended. I think that cannot be delayed, and because this is some aspects are sending a completely wrong message, in my opinion.
Well, I hope we will come to that when we look at that item on this agenda. Could you not talk while others speak? Okay. So let's vote on those minutes. Is anybody willing to propose them?
Yeah,
Okay, anybody to second them?
I'll second.
Thank you. Shall we vote on them to accept them?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm abstaining as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Right. So now, still on item 4, we are at public participation. A 15-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting. Have you had any?
I haven't received any formal requests, no.
Thank you. I'm now going to propose that we change the order of the agenda a little, because the report on the key public conveniences, we're very fortunate that Tony Marvia, who's been looking after the toilets, is here, and will talk to us about how this pilot has been going. And I think, so that Tony can not spend hours and hours listening to us droning on, it would be better if we could move that item up the agenda to address it now. So all those if I'm proposing that,
I'll second that, yeah.
all those in favour? Okay. So Tony, would you like to come and tell us about, could you bear to stand in the middle there, or take a seat or something?
Don't she have her back?
Do you want to be on the
Yes,
video?
we will.
No, I'll be
Stand
here
in
now.
that corner.
So, hi everyone, I'm Tony Marvia. I've been cleaning the toilets, both the quay and the cattle market, since November 2021. Over my time cleaning, especially the quay, as that's what we're talking about tonight, the pay machines and the doors of both the shower and the disabled toilets have been vandalised 3 times that I can remember, maybe more, in the time that I've worked for the council, which obviously results in them being closed for quite some length of time while we're waiting for the repairs to be carried out. I've had members of the public give me a lot of verbal abuse on several occasions because of the pay machines to the public toilets, with them feeling that they should be free or that they shouldn't have to pay via their bank cards. A lot of the older people don't have bank cards and they don't know how to use them via the pay machines. Up until the May trial of the other side being open for free, I always said that the quay toilets were the negative public, as the cattle market toilets, being free and old, but always clean unless obviously the school children have been in there. However, always receiving positive comments no matter what, never once a negative comment. The trial of the quay toilets being open for free. It took a little bit longer than expected to get them open for the trial, as we had a problem with the accessing the water feed for the Legion health testing to be carried out. But this was done not long after, and has been open since Saturday the 6th of May. I've been opening them for 9 AM, a lot of the time 8 AM, and then closing them at 5 PM, sometimes not until 6 PM, obviously because I'm doing both sets of toilets by myself. I've had a lot of positive comments, and these are some of the main ones. So nice to see them back open. These toilets are so clean. I do hope they're going to stay open, as they're an asset to Sandwich. It's lovely to see them clean during the day, as where I live, they only get cleaned when they're closed. It's so hard to believe these are public toilets. I've never seen public toilets kept so clean. I even had couple of weeks back a £1 coin taped to the office door down the tree, saying thank you for keeping the toilet so clean. I have also had feedback from other people as to why they're not open for more hours, which I've explained it's for a trial period at the moment. I did look into it, and according to the BTA, British Toilets Association, the recommended hours for public toilets to be open is 12 hours a day or dawn to dusk, which would be 8 AM till 8 PM. This weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, I opened both sets of toilets, 7 AM and closed them cattle market at 6 PM and the quay at 8 PM. This wasn't a problem at all, worked very well. We got to 7:30 and we were virtually left with just the staff or the volunteers which were manning things down the quay. So by 8 o'clock, most of it had gone anyway. I did on Sunday morning forget to put the light on in the ladies' toilets. No one used them while I was down there said anything to me until someone asked me if I'd seen the post on Facebook while I was up at the cattle market toilets, in which I went straight down to the quay and turned them on, and posted on Facebook apologising, saying the lights are now on. The shower and the disabled toilet lights are on sensors, so when people come in they go on, and when people leave they go off. So I think that might be worth looking into, because if we've already got that system there, they should be able to feed off of it and connect the ladies and men's to it. I didn't realise until looking in there yesterday that once the doors are closed on the ladies, you are in complete darkness, because I pull them to wipe the backs, that's it. I don't need to close that cubicle toilet because I'm not physically using the toilet, I'm just cleaning it. Another issue is the disabled and the shower cubicle are still paid to use, which I feel needs addressing, as I do get approached quite regularly as to, we've just paid around there. Well, unfortunately that's for you to then bring up with Sandwich Town Council. It does state it, and we've got a notice on both the shower, which is currently closed anyway, and on the disabled toilet, and saying that if they go around the other side they are free to use. The public are not keen on the wall gates as they struggle to get the water to come out. They have been de-lime scaled and what have you, so it's not the fact that they're lime scaled up. When you put your hand under, you have to kind of bring it back to get under the sensor for the water to come out, which once I show them, they're quite happy to do it, and they're, oh, it must be us, we're not quite sure what we're doing, but it's not, it is a case of figuring it out, which can be quite inconvenient. It's also been pointed out to me this weekend, which I walk past regular, it's never affected me, but it does should you be in a wheelchair. The flower box, the phone box and the telegraph pole on the corner of the toilets, wheelchair users have to go on the road to get round, which obviously for us lot it wouldn't affect, but a wheelchair user or someone with a pushchair it's going to affect. You've got quite a tight gap to get through. And that's all I have to say. And obviously remember, I'm the only cleaner now doing it as well.
Thank you. I think Councillor Gray, you had something you wanted to say as well.
Yes, I do, if I may interject. Shall I go up and
Yeah.
I've just come back from the quay before I came here, and as some of you know, there are 7 yachts in over the weekend, and they're over from the Blackwater Sailing Club. They come here regularly and they're having a wonderful time, but they told me that they are being charged by Dover Council £15 per boat per night for mooring there, for which they said to me, we get no facilities whatsoever except toilets which are open during the daytime. They expect, as the yachtsmen do, that if they tie up on a quay, they expect the normal facilities will be electricity, water and 24-hour toilets. But what really concerns me is the Dover Council are receiving over £200 for these 2 nights, and yet the boat owners, and there are 3 or 4 people per boat, so there's quite a lot of people, are using the toilets, and we, Sandwich Council, have to pay for that, in effect. Similarly, they're all using the one water tap on the quay, and presumably our water is metered, so we have to pay for this water, which the boat owners get free. Now surely, and I mentioned this to Councillor Sampson when he was doing his report on the toilets, that we must come to an agreement with Dover Council that they make a contribution to Sandwich Town Council for the use of the toilets by visiting yachtsmen. And it just seems to me obvious that nothing has been done, and I think that is something I would really recommend to this committee that should be pursued.
Thank you. It's very helpful. Okay, so,
May I just add that I took this group on a town tour today, and they really enjoyed Sandwich. They said it was a lovely place, but they were a bit niggly about the facilities generally on the quay. And as I say, I think it was seven yachts moored, and I took about 17 or 18 people round with one of the guides. And of course all the tourist revenue they bring, because after that we're going to have lunch in various places. And I think they had a refreshment last night, as we say in Scotland.
yes. I mean, part of this is covered by the consultancy report on the quay, which we will address, but not at great length. But I don't want that to become this issue to become a long-term issue, which gets easily kicked into the grass. So, and I do think if we're going to have visiting yachtsmen, we're going to have to do something about that quite quickly. Councillor Frank.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was just a temporary, and I think we should extend this trial period to very popular. It was only going to be a month, I believe, wasn't it?
Well, yes, but I mean that's a decision that we will make this evening. Yes.
That we extend the trial
Yes,
period.
yes, definitely. Yes, yeah.
Can I just say a thank you needs to go to Tony, because she's on her own for the weekend, and this weekend it's particularly extra, the large amounts of people, and those toilets, both sets of toilets that I used were very clean, so a thank you needs to go to Tony for working on her own, cleaning both sets of toilets all weekend. So.
Okay, so I just want to make certain that's recorded in the minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Can I just mention that the planters that are outside the toilets are being replaced. Dover District Council has found some money, and they've offered to replace 6 of our old apple crates for free. So we could actually do a test down there to see whether they should be there at all, or whether they should be moved in a different direction to allow access. So we'll do that next month.
That's good. Thank you. Okay, we've got a number of issues. One is that, as you'll notice in the report, if you look at attachment 4, there are recommendations. You have to scroll down to get to attachment 4. It takes some time. But perhaps, Town Clerk, you could remind us what those recommendations are.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll get through the papers and like you to.
Excuse me, I've got it here.
Okay, well done. Well, I yet.
Shall I read them out?
Yes, let's just wait until the Town Clerk's concentrating.
I've got them here. It's just we jumped around on the agenda, so I have them in order. Okay. Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to consider a recommended extension of the trial of the pilot opening access scheme at the key public conveniences. The Heritage and Townscape Committee received a report from the RFO. I just want the recommendations.
Yes.
Okay. The RFO has asked the committee and the council to note the cost implications. An additional budget required of £4,969, with the total conveyances salary budget of £21,710 as a result if the trial is extended. The total current budget for public conveyances is £16,740. So the recommendation is to undertake an extension of the trial period of 1 month to reopen the ladies and gentlemen toilets on the Sandwich Quay that we know were closed for more than a year, and to recommend to council that this trial is extended for the summer season.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Ripley first.
Can I just ask how long the trial is expected to last for until it becomes a permanent feature rather than just a trial?
The trial is now over.
Right, so
Tony, in a way, is our evaluator and has indicated that it's gone extremely well. So the toilets have not been vandalised, although they are not staffed. They're visited twice a day, and they are pristine.
yeah, what I'm asking is, is it still going to be a trial as it continues, or is it going to be a permanent thing?
Well, I think the proposal is that it becomes permanent in that they are open now and free until the end of September. I think that's what we decided was the end of the season. And that we can then have another think, really, about whether we want to keep them open at all during the winter season and reopen and keep them open using the same hours, and of course there would be costs involved, or close them, the ones that are currently free, the ones that are where you use contactless cards would presumably remain open. That's just the disabled toilet and the shower. So there would still have to be some cleaning done, but then they would reopen it again at Easter 2024. But I think we should revisit that at the end of September and see whether we think that's adequate.
Can I just ask about the disabled toilet, which I think is that's been charged as an absolute disgrace.
I mean, it's against the Equality Act too, and that really worries me. And it's something that we didn't sort of notice when we were full. I was going to use the word flushed with joy about the toilets becoming free of charge, but we didn't really notice that we would thereby discriminate against disabled people. And I think we're going to have to do something about that.
I was told by somebody that had a something that's commonly known as a radar key,
Yes,
that they get in for free.
they do. If they have a radar
So
key, they do.
why are we
So-
discriminating?
yes, well, that's
There's
a good point.
used to be a radar key. I mean, I don't know what's changed, but the Bell Hotel always used to hold the radar key, and anybody that was disabled was always directed to the Bell Hotel to get the radar key, and then come back over and then return it afterwards. If they didn't have their own radar key, but quite a large number of disabled people have their radar keys.
That's a bit of a performance, particularly if you're disabled, isn't it?
They do have their own key though, don't they?
It is, but a lot of them
Only
don't.
if they do,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, they do
But
carry
otherwise we couldn't leave them the door.
I think
all the
we do
time.
have to think about this. I mean, not all disabled people, you have to wait to get a radar key and all the rest of it. So there will be people with disabilities who won't be able to get in. So there's a problem there, and I think Jill and I need to talk about that and how we're going to resolve it.
Before voting on the recommendation, I just wanted to clarify exactly what we're being asked to approve, because when I look at what's in front of me, first of all, thanks for clarifying end of summer means September, but it doesn't say that within the report.
Yeah.
Secondly, the amounts on here are very confusing, at least to me, because if we've got a budget already identified of 16,740 based on a 1 month trial period, there might be some costs that I'm not aware of, but they're not clear in here. And then we've been asked to extend for another 4 to 5 months, and that will only cost 4,000 or so. For me, my simple mind just really doesn't compute
Can I
as...
just explain? I think I'm right. or do you
Yeah.
want to?
Well, I was going to say that obviously the standard hours are already incorporated in the budget. So the additional budget, 4,969, is because you're extending the hours that you're open. Because obviously in the trial we're extending for the events as well. So it's longer opening hours. So that's where that extra additional.
Also,
Weekend
there's
basis.
additional cleaning because the toilets have been closed until now. But as I understand it from that report, there is already an annual budget
Yes.
of 16,000,
740.
Yes.
740,
Yes.
which is used to fund staff cleaning hours and materials and so on. And the proposal is that the hours get extended because there are more toilets to clean, because they were closed for 3 years. They've been open. And that means more hours for the cleaner, and that would be an additional £5,000.
Okay, so all I would ask, Councillor Anderson, is if not to stop the vote here at all, but is in terms of the minutes, that it's very clearly spelled out what we approved, because an explanation across the table is helpful, but it doesn't really help me in terms of then backtracking to later points. It would be really helpful to have what you've sort of said now, but in a very clear manner that documents it for the records.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But also we need to vote on whether we as a committee recommend that we spend an additional £5,000 on
Yeah.
keeping open and free until the end of September 2023. Can I just?
Yeah.
I think Dean Reeves.
Okay.
Can I just ask, so that the money side of things, so at the moment it would add up to four and something extra £1,000. Where will the money come from? Because is there a contingency plan or anything in place, because it's coming from the budget?
Yes, so the RFO has confirmed today that there is contingency in the budget for anything like this, because also that could be used for watering trees as well, which I think is another item that's been discussed. So yes, there is provision in the budget where you can take the money for this.
Okay, thank you.
So let me understand this again, like Councillor Duke, I'm a bit puzzled by it. Are we saying the budget of 21,710 is a combination of 16.7 and 4.96?
Yes, I haven't.
That's what it is.
It is.
Okay.
I'll work that one out.
Yeah, I guess that was, but I just wanted it confirmed.
Yes.
It could be done with a little bit clearer explanation, may I suggest, for the future.
Okay, yes.
May I just ask, is there no possibility of just simply changing the lock on the disabled toilet so that it would be opened and shut at the same time as everything else is opened and shut? And how much would that really cost?
That cost a fortune each year. We did look into it.
No, I think we can disable the lock, but I think we have to look at this fairly carefully, because it's a disabled only toilet.
Yeah.
We want to keep it for disabled people.
Yeah.
If we just make it free like all the others, or accessible like all the others, it becomes just an ordinary toilet in which disabled people can use. And that might be satisfactory, but I think we need to think about that.
Okay.
I do believe, sorry Councillor Officer, I do believe that the town sergeant said to me once, because I had my problems with it before, is that you can turn the payment stuff off and only use the radar key.
Yes.
So you have to have a radar key, and it would be free for people that have the radar key.
Yes.
That's what most councils do, Canterbury, Thanet, etc. That's they've all got radar keys only.
Thank you for that, because I think that's right.
Yeah.
But we just need to check that. And we can deactivate that contact.
Can I just say, when you deactivate it in the cupboard, you have it off, on, or shut. So there's nothing to say, right, you can deactivate the card machine and they can only use the key. I haven't got facilities to do that. I've only got 3 things that I can turn it to.
Okay. I think there's.
So it's
I
either
think
shut,
we can
open, or it's completely
I
unlocked.
think there's some sort of central control where we can.
There has to be something, so
I think
override
there's
those pay machines.
Yes.
But I'm sure if
We
when,
can find.
I'm sure when John went down there last night, he couldn't.
Okay. I think it needs to be done by the company. Councillor Morehouse?
Can I ask a question about disability and the definition of disability? We're talking about wheelchair users. There are other disabilities that are not visible. Crohn's and colitis, Crohn's disease, colitis, prostate disease.
Absolutely.
Crohn's and colitis UK do issue keys for sufferers. There's no such provision for any sufferers of prostate disease.
Right.
I do think that needs to be taken into consideration.
Okay. Well,
When it comes to talking of disability, they should be as clearly defined as
I have,
disability.
I have a radar key here for my daughter, who's severely autistic. She needs to use the toilet when she wants to go, so that I use it, and we've been given this by her practitioners.
yeah. I don't think that, I mean, I take that point, but I don't think it's within the remit of this committee to tackle that particular issue. But, so what, we have a recommendation, and that is that we spend this additional very nearly £5,000 on keeping these toilets going free of charge until the end of September. Is that, and that's the proposal. Is anybody willing to second that? Okay. And shall we vote?
Sorry, I need to ask, am I supposed to vote or not?
No.
No, I didn't think I was.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so that's
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Tony, for all the work you do. And, you know, and presenting, so and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Right, thanks everyone.
Thank
you.
Good, so now we go back to okay, item 5, which is the report of the Tourism Information Working Group. And we've already had a comment that we looked at the Tourism Information Working Group report.
Chair, I think we just did a note, aren't we? We're not going to discuss it.
No, I think we do have, there are 2 items that I think we do need to discuss.
Well,
And
just a note.
well,
I think we should note, Chair.
okay, that's a proposal. Anybody second
I
that?
second that.
Would you like to vote for just noting the report?
Noting the report.
I do believe that the report last month, Councillor Frank, the report just clearly says what was people said, what they want to think, that kind of thing, and the report came, and the recommendations from the last meeting from Councillor Wiles, who was part of the committee, said that it has to be put on the back burner until that bus stop's moved. Once that bus stop's moved, then it will be discussed again. That was the recommendation.
I would like to say that there have been other suggestions about where tourism information could be delivered from within this building, other than the old tourist office. I think the report itself suggested that we should use the museum, and I think that's now been knocked firmly on the head. I don't think that's going to work, but there has been a suggestion that Guildhall foyer, if it were possible to keep it open 7 days a week and to keep the rest of the Guildhall secure, if that's possible, that might be a good compromise, because at the moment I understand that, well, I know that the museum coordinator is very keen that the room that used to be the Tourism Information Office become a permanent temporary exhibition space for the museum. So there are competing demands on that space. But I do think this is a decision that has to be taken urgently, and we cannot just go on postponing it because it's too difficult. So I'm against us just saying, let's just note this. But I would like to have a discussion, and I would like to be told or advised where that discussion should take place if it doesn't take place here.
Can I just say something, please? If we continue just to note things things are never going to progress, are
Exactly.
they? And these
We have discussed this though, councillor.
yeah.
This has been discussed.
But we haven't discussed.
We haven't resolved
It's
it.
discussed.
Well, it hasn't been resolved, has it?
Well, it won't be resolved at the moment, like councillor Marina say, we've got to wait until practically all the building work's done.
I don't think. we
And I
need-
think also the council, especially you new councillors, you must look round the building to look at foyer, to look at why we moved to the little one on the front, which was used for weddings.
Yeah.
So it's very important, the front entrance for weddings. Also, there's a step there, so it's not all that. So that is one, and this here in the foyer was 7 days a week, and it's costed.
I agree with you on that totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think we need to take some actions.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, but
Yes, town clerk.
I'm going to say for the purposes of this meeting, this is to note the report. So there wasn't any decision or recommendations within the report. So I think if members are minded that they want this to be urgently debated, then the STC meeting, when all councillors are present, I think would be the best opportunity.
escalated altogether.
Okay,
I propose that.
I'll second it.
okay. So shall we vote? But it goes on the June 26th agenda to talk about it.
Yeah.
And where tourism information should be delivered from this building.
Because we had, Chair, that the councillors actually look around the building to look at the different, they don't tell us.
We have.
Okay.
We have. I came round with you.
Oh, yes.
He's getting old.
No, no. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So item 6 is the report of the Sandwich Waterways Working Group, which also came both to this committee and to the town council. But as I remember, we didn't actually make any decision from it. And there are 2 outstanding issues which I think we should make a decision about. One of them is that the report itself recommends that from this committee there should be one councillor selected who is a single point to liaise with the Environment Agency, the Internal Drainage Board, DEC and so on about the waterways. So that's one decision which I think we should make. I'll just finish. And the second issue which I identified, and I have had correspondence about as an individual councillor, is about the dredging of the guesting, which is, I think, taking place now or is about to take place, and where the silt from that dredging should go. And that there seem to be, I think, 2 choices. One is Gallows Meadow, and the other is the land on the far side, the cricket club side of the river, which is part of the Gays and Salts Reserve land, I think. So there are those 2 issues. Councillor
So, yeah, to address those 2 issues, issue number 1, I'd like to propose Councillor Mark Morehouse as our representative on the waterways, because having been through this before, and I was a waterways representative myself many years ago, and the key to all of this is Dover District Council, and they tend to, I don't know if it's still happening, but the meetings for the internal drainage and Dover District and everything was all done at Whitfield, and it was all hosted, not here at Sandwich Town Council, but it was hosted by Dover District Council. It just seems key to me, if Councillor Morehouse didn't want to do it, perhaps we could ask Councillor Friend, but it just seems key to me that somebody that has got a very clear line of communication with Dover District Council and the Internal Drainage Board. Up at Dover District Council, I'm speaking from experience now, 8 years there, they have representatives on the Internal Drainage Board at Dover District Council with that information already there. Dover District Council is the key to whoever's the person to undertake this job. So I'd first like to offer it to Councillor Morehouse if you take it on. It's not very onerous, it's perhaps only a few meetings a year.
The trouble is that Councillor Morehouse is not a member of this committee, but
Well, he's a councillor of the town council.
Is that?
You just let him ask a question a minute ago. So that would be my first proposal to number the first one, and then the second one for anybody that's been here more than a couple of years is the sill is always put onto Gallows Field. It's, hasn't it, for years. It's always been put onto Gallows Field, and the reason being for that is because Gallows Field is fenced off. Now this sill, and when we did the other waterways like the road walk, some of this sill is contaminated, and you have to keep it away from the public. So you can't put it anywhere like cricket grounds or anywhere where children could go and play in it and start doing sandcastles. It's very important that it has to be kept away from the public, and so the recommendation is always to put it on Gallows Field because it is fenced off. The field.
So when?
Well, I think Councillor Marie was first,
Okay.
and then
I'll let Councillor Suka go first because I'm about to burst your bubble. So I'll let Councillor.
So I was going to ask what recommendation we would be agreeing around the silt, because I do know Gate and Salts were aware of the proposal by the Environment Agency to take it there, and they have objected strongly, which is why we're here now, looking at options. And I think that their presentation was around wildlife impact, but interestingly you said it's been done for years, so there is an issue here that needs to be explored, including the local neighbourhood, alongside Gate and Salts, alongside land that wouldn't interfere with any of the things that has been suggested as risks. So it's not a simple issue to resolve today.
Councillor Marie.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Anderson, you're not going to like me, but I'm going to say it anyway. It says on the agenda the committee asked to note the report for information purposes. So my suggestion would be I agree with the proposals, they're great, but I do feel that the proposal should, the same as the tourist information book, go to full council at the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't go to full council, but I'm just
No,
let's air it now.
Can I just make an observation? I was on the working group that walked around the town with Councillor Heaven, as he was then, and actually there wasn't anyone there from DDC. That meeting was done with the Drainage Board, the Environment Agency, and there was someone else. But we walked around, and how Councillor Heaven arranged that meeting, I think, was directly with those people who were more than willing to engage with Sandwich Town Council and with Councillor Heaven. So we had two different stories at that time. One was the story that we were getting from DDC, which was very different to the story that we got from the Horse's Mouth. And in fact, the Environment Agency, I think, with the Drainage Board, did the most incredible job at sorting this out. It was always in the pipeline, some of the things that they had in mind. So I don't think we should rule out, or this body, Sandwich Town Council, should rule out being able to go direct and creating those meetings themselves if there are things to be discussed and not purely dealing with DDC. Sorry, I want to say one other thing. With respect to the silt, we were told something very different too. And that was from the Environment Agency, in that when the silt is removed, one of the reasons they can't move it far, or they don't wish to, is because it's heavy. And it costs an enormous amount of money to move that silt away from the area. But they had at that point suggested at least 3 different sites. Some of it, yes, there was some perhaps Gallows Field. Some was to where the Amy Services depot is. Some was to Donkey Paddock. And well, it wasn't an enormous amount, but it was that end that they could have done there. And some was over onto the other side of the water. The problem they encountered was that when they moved it the last time to the other side of the water, I can't think the name of the field there, but when they moved it onto the other side, the number of complaints they got from residents over the sight of it, which was not at all attractive. But there were other places that they were thinking maybe it could be moved to. So that's what I gleaned from walking around with those people.
Thank you. And Councillor Black.
Well, I'm surprised the comment about contamination, because we haven't got any heavy industry. If this is being done on a regular basis, you ask where on earth is this contamination coming from? Because you accept when you're clearing up a brownfield site, there's an issue. But if this is being done on a regular basis, and if the Environment Agency are prepared to suggest 3 sites, it suggests to me that the contamination may be not quite the issue that was suggested in the past. Clearly, the first time you clear something out, there's a problem. So what is this contamination? And if it's so contaminated, how's it help?
I think we need to, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, and that's helpful, but we have got a suggestion that we have a single point person from this council. Personally, I would prefer it somebody from this committee, but if that's not necessary, I'm prepared to be very flexible about who would be the liaison point of contact with the Environment Agency, Internal Drainage Board and BBC, and the suggestion has been that Councillor Mark Morehouse be that person. So we have that proposal. And then we have another issue about, a short-term issue about where the silt from dredging the Guessling should go. And I don't think this committee can make that decision at the moment. But, and I'm just wondering where the best place is for that decision, or our influence to be worked on. Let's just tackle the individual council. Do you think that's a good idea? Because that's a recommendation of the report.
Which item, sorry, Chair, which bit is the good thing? To nominate a person or a single point of disposal? Because the two are very different.
Yes, they are different. I'm saying there are 2 issues. So the first issue is, do we want a single point of contact at this council to liaise with these external bodies who are responsible for maintaining and keeping the waterways in reasonable condition?
I would certainly support that.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we all vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay, then the question is who that person should be. And the suggestion has been Councillor Morehouse. Is Councillor Morehouse willing to do that?
Yeah, I'm willing to do it.
Okay.
But I've got no objection if somebody else wants to.
Yes. I mean, I was going to suggest Councillor Mallett, but and talk to him.
Can I just come back and just say to Carol George that it's not removing our sort of ability to have meetings on our own, because Councillor Morehouse is also a fully elected Sandwich Town Councillor, I hasten to add.
Yes.
So he could be acting as that. What I was trying to put over is that being at Dover District Council, there is an internal drainage board there on a regular basis, and so he could quite readily attend that
I just
meeting.
don't want to get sidetracked because we can only work through
No, indeed. No,
Okay, so shall yes?
This was to note the report. I think this might have to go to the full town council.
Yes, it will go as a recommendation to the full-time council.
Sorry, I was just going to add on the second point around the silt. I understand the Environment
Well, can we leave the silt for the minute? We're just going to
Yep, sorry,
vote on
apologies.
that. Okay. So the proposal is that Councillor Mark Morehouse become the single liaison point with the Internal Drainage Board, the Environment Agency and Dover District Council.
Can I just say, I don't expect to be voted onto this committee, but I'm very
No.
willing to come and talk at this.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so anybody willing to propose
I'm
that?
proposing.
And seconded by Councillor Frampton. Shall we all vote? Okay, So that's that presumably.
I wouldn't mind.
And then the second question is about the silt from dredging the Guestling.
Yeah.
And I don't, well, you know, maybe I've.
I was just
made a
going to,
mistake here, but-
sorry, Councillor Anderson, I was just going to say, I understand there is a meeting probably next week in any case talking about this particular issue. Environment Agency, DDC, the Cricket Club, Gays and Salts, and possibly neighbours. I am a neighbour there, so any vote here I wouldn't take part in. I'm a resident impacted by where the silt goes.
Yes.
So there is a meeting, I understand, probably next week to talk
Well,
about
that's
this issue.
very helpful to know. I think that means that we don't actually need to consider options at this meeting. So, but perhaps at the next meeting you could tell us
Yes,
what has transpired.
if there's a decision.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Oh, the town hall, item 8. Now, I think this is something that is left over from, as it were, the previous regime, about which nothing was done, I don't think. But I am aware, and I think other councillors are aware of an additional problem about the town hall, but I'm aware of the section of the town hall which is beside the cinema, which, as I understand it, the council owns the cinema. That section of the town wall that runs on the left hand, if you're facing,
That's not the town wall.
that's not the town wall, it's something different.
Yeah, it's a different wall.
Oh, okay. Well, can we
Okay.
talk about it, although it's...
No, it's not on the agenda, so we can't, can we? It's a different wall. Ramparts, the middle wall above. This is the wall by the cinema.
Well, I would like to talk about this.
Monday's meeting. No, that's good. Which one is meetings? It's a dangerous wall by the cinema.
Yes.
Okay, so
We have
it's
been
very
discussed
what is the
before.
issue, yes.
Yes, it has been discussed before.
But nothing has been done
No,
about
no.
it, so I want it back on the agenda
It's
so
in
that
there.
something does get done about
Yes.
it. The point is that it's in a very dangerous state. It is, as far as we know, half owned by the council and half owned by the adjoining building.
Yeah.
And so there is a question as to who is responsible for repairing it. And it needs to be repaired because goodness knows what might happen any moment. And so we need to establish who's responsible for that and how much it will cost to repair it. So I would like that as a recommendation to the council. None.
Could I give that a little bit of history,
Yes.
Chair? Sorry. Yeah, so this, I think, before we actually go too far on this, the previous occupant of Jill's position, the Chief Executive Officer, this came up before, didn't it? We discussed it.
Yeah.
And it was
Costed.
determined that the gentleman that leases the cinema off of us would not have the wherewithal or the money because he runs on a shoestring, so he wouldn't be able to do it. But the Chief Executive Officer was delegated to get some quotations for the repair of the wall. But the problem is the wall, it can't just be built by Wimpy Homes UK or something like that. It has to be done by specialist builders who have got that heritage ability. And one of the ones we used to use was somebody called Hipson's. And the Chief Executive Officer was delegated to go and get these quotations from three building companies. Now, those quotations could be just sat down in the filing cabinet downstairs. So could I just suggest, before we go too far with this, because it has been discussed before, would it be possible for the town clerk possibly to ask either Karen or we haven't really got anybody else, but perhaps have a little look and see, it might even just be in a folder, email folder or something like that. But the Chief Executive Officer was delegated. We discussed it like we are tonight. We said it's dangerous. We said the cinema guy can't afford to repair it. It would fall on the council. And the Chief Executive was sent off quotations. So
So,
Have you seen anything
Councillor-
that resembles? No.
I'm certainly happy to have it. That's
yeah,
fine.
and can I ask if that is the route to follow, that we also provided with any previous documentation around this? So was it established that it is a council responsibility, and if so, was that documented?
It would have been part of the minutes of the meeting
Yeah, that's
to
the
say
key
that.
thing for me,
Indeed,
if I
that's
have the right
correct.
decision.
Yeah, I think there was a problem, like we said, ownership of the neighbouring property and our property. And I think the cheapest option was just to reduce the height by about 6 foot. It is quite a high wall. And then just point up the other bit just to make it safe. I don't know what exactly what it's not. It was part of our hall. The cinema was a Malt Shovel House was a pub.
Yeah.
And that was the entertainment
Yes.
hall. And they knocked it down in the 30s and was trying to build the cinema. But they left that boundary wall, so there's no need for that boundary wall to be that high. So
And just because you as a councillor, if we were to change the height of a wall within the conservation area, would we have to go through the planning process to
We
get that?
would.
yeah,
We would.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
it's cheaper than knocking it down and rebuilding it.
Okay. So what we're saying is that the town clerk will look to see if she can find these tenders. And if you can't, then you reactivate tenders. But we also need to, and in a way we're currently accepting that the town council is responsible for the whole of this work.
For the safety.
That was my point.
Yes. And that we can't expect the neighbouring property to make a contribution. Is that correct? That's what we're deciding.
I think if that's what members are happy with, I think if it is a party wall, then that, like I say, the evidence of that needs to be produced, and to clarify.
I'm happy if it's based on a previous discussion that's documented that establishes those facts.
Okay. And the other bit of the town wall, I take it that this is not town wall, it's something else that we're talking about. But the other bit of the town wall which has been raised recently is the bits of the town wall that are in the Bay Hall garden. And this was raised by Councillor Green, I think, in some communication. I don't know, is the Maddox working group that
We've got a meeting tomorrow.
Yes,
Okay.
the first time.
But you can talk about it.
It looks perfectly good at the actual wall. Put a bit of ivy on it, but it's
Thank you.
bit of gardening.
Thank you. Thank you. So is that enough for that?
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
Okay. The Bowling Street lights, well, they're still on the agenda because there is this anomaly that when all these heritage lamps were put into this part of Sandwich North, somehow or other the Bowling Street lights were not replaced. And they look awful, there are 2 of them. And they're referred to by the residents of Bowling Street as the motorway lights, and that's what they present for. I think Kent Highways was written to, I don't know, I've never seen any evidence they were, and asked if they would do something about this, and the answer came back no. Oh yes, I remember seeing an email from Councillor Chandler. But since then, a resident of Bowling Street, who is an electrical contractor, has written to me and sent me details of heritage lamps that could be installed, which are much cheaper than the £10,000 per lamp which Kent Highways has quoted. So I just wondered if we could take this on a bit. I don't know. Yes.
Oh yeah, so when in my time up at Dover District Council, there is a transport forum, and at that transport forum there are lists. There's lists of maintenance work that's done, so it's a liaison with Kent Highways and what have you like that. There is also a replacement lights list as well. and they've replaced the lights. And in a similar situation, to give you an experience, is in a place called Mill Wall, which for those of you that don't know, it's where the bowling club is. There was a similar situation there where there was a motorway light there, and Kent Highways replaced it and put a heritage lamp in for free as part of a schedule. And this schedule is ongoing, and they've changed the heritage lightings. I live in a 1965 bungalow out by the technology school, and we have got heritage lighting in our lovely little pretty cul-de-sac. So the Kent Highways were quite happy to come and put highways lightings in an environment that is 1965s. So I think Kent Highways, there was an anomaly on this one that I think the owner of the property or properties approached Kent Highways direct, and there was this confusion, and then Councillor Chandler came back and said, oh no, we're not prepared to do it. But then they produced a quote and they said, but we can do it for you, but for £10,000 or something like that. And then the resident said, oh well, surely Sandwich Town Council would pay for that. But if anybody attended the annual town meeting and sort of was still awake through my very long speech, Sandwich Town Council has got no responsibility for street lighting at all. Street lighting comes under two people. One, Highways, which is KCC, and Dover District Council also has lighting under theirs. So the bill for the replacement of this light lays with Kent Highways, and that is what should be happening. And our KCC councillor should be fighting for a town of this kudos and reputation of having the longest medieval street in the UK. She should be fighting for us to get these lamps changed. And they have some of these lamps in the yard, because sorry to tell you this, I used to work at the Highways Depot for trading standards and have a yard with lots of surplus equipment in there. If they could not put two heritage lights together, I think it's very, very poor. And that's, I'll shut up now.
Well, that's very, very helpful, but it's not going to get us any further because we've got...
I was going to say, as it is the conservation, all we can do is put pressure on KCC and say this is a conservation area and these lights are completely out of character.
Yes, they do.
Because you go to Durham's all...
Sure, we can get a posse together and go and wave your ones in your road, Councillor
Yes,
Carter.
Yes,
Please do.
I'm tall enough to reach them, so I'll go and do it.
Councillor Gray, Councillor Gray.
There is a resident of Bowling Street here who is affected by that light. I don't know if you want to say anything about this, do you?
Am I allowed to?
Yes, of course,
Hi.
come and talk to us at the front.
I am. Well, shall I?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Mary Claire Ritchie, I live in Bowling Street. I have recently been in contact with KCC regarding the street lamp, and then I realised there's another one at the top. They own them, but they said, and I've forgotten her name, that there's been in discussions before. The problem, it's not a problem, but it's our problem now, is that they were never heritage lamps originally. There's the two odd ones, there's one heritage and two highways. So they never replaced them because they just replaced like for like. So they changed the LED bulb, I think, 8 years ago. And it's right next to me, but it shines into the other house, and then it dims. So they've said they have no responsibility to change it. And I think there's also some electrical issue with the supply power to make it heritage. But they said there is, we could apply for lottery funding. There's funding available. So that's what she said to me. So it just keeps going backwards. But it is, she said there's no conservation responsibility for KCC, even though it's a conservation area, which doesn't make sense. But because they were replaced, it was put in the 70s maybe, that there's no responsibility to make it heritage. So that's what, I've forgotten her name, I've got it.
Was it Councillor John?
No, it was somebody from KCC who actually rang me because I sent an email, I got a report number. Because I was actually, it it was supposed to come on the agenda, but I think it'll be next month, about an issue with heavy goods vehicles. I emailed you, Mary-Claire Ritchie, and you said that you might be able to add it to the agenda about lorries coming through St Mary's and hitting the pub.
Yes.
So that's another issue.
Again, yes.
Time and time again, but
Can I just ask, in terms of,
thank you.
it's a very specific issue, these two lights. But if you take a stock of the heritage lights around the conservation area through various parts of the circular walk, the majority of them are in a very, very poor state. We've also got a number of lights that are actually faulty. There's a common problem that's occurred at the start of this year nationally in terms of some lights being faulty. Some of that has impacted some of our lights. So they run with a blue stroke purple colour rather than the warm white that it should have. So I just wonder, and it's not for this meeting today to resolve, but is there something that we could do around surveying the state of the lights and then make it in, rather than piecemeal, and yours is a really important issue, but let's not lose sight of actually there's a general issue about the state of our heritage lights, which are a selling point, but not for people to come here and say, look at the state of those lights.
No, I think there's a general point about street furniture, actually,
Yes.
and keeping it looking good. And I think that's something that we should talk about at this meeting, and we'll put it on the agenda.
I would just very quickly to answer Councillor Tuker's request on that. A lady who Councillor Morehouse also knows, part of the Sandwich Society, was a lady called Lynn Davies, who is a qualified architect and lives out at Finglesham. She, when they changed over the lights to LED, she got a survey done on the lights, and she found the LED lights were not the standard, EU standard that they should be. You're 100% correct. The luminance that comes out of those lights should be a certain radioactive luminance that is soft and doesn't have that blue shade to it. And Lynn Davies, who's a qualified architect, found out that they were the wrong ones. But of course, somebody needs to take that up with KCC, not this
The
meeting.
issue you have, Councillor Carter, is when you walk along the bus, you've got a mixture. So
Exactly.
It's really strange in terms of an experience at night walking through there.
Exactly. So there is a report on that.
Carol,
Thank
and
you.
then I'm going to bring this to a conclusion.
The street furniture, we walked the town pre-COVID when Sandwich and Bloom were looking at entering a competition. And we couldn't enter a competition because of the state of the town in general. And Sue Chandler was actually with us, and then Roger Ragg, who was then also there looking at everything. They did manage to change one of the lights at this side of St Clement's. So they did that within days, which is a bit strange. So they did change a light there. However, there was an issue that Roger Ragg told us about from DDC, that street furniture is not necessarily all owned by, or the responsibility is not all with just, say, KCC. You had the boulders at the front of the Guildhall, they were DDC and others were KCC. So they did tell us if we'd like to improve on it, they were very happy to supply the paint and we could do it ourselves.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's an interesting suggestion because, you know, there has been talk of perhaps there should be a town sprucer. I mean, that's been in the pipeline for years and years. And we are going to do this staff review, and, you know, that's something to put on that wish list, perhaps. And that would become the responsibility of a town sprucer.
May I just add, you have got the community caretaker scheme that runs in Sandwich as well. You can contact them on social media. They can do it if you want to do it quickly or now, rather than waiting for a sprucer. Speak to them, they're able to do it. They've got a lot of volunteers now.
Okay, well that's interesting. Well, can we put up, we'll put keeping up the street furniture on the next agenda and see what we do. And meantime, we'll talk about community caretaker scheme. Okay, I think that's as far as we can take it.
So I we noting the report, Madam
Yes,
Chairman?
we are noting the report, so.
I propose we note the report.
Okay, anybody second it? All in favour? Okay. The climate emergency report, which is attachment 5, which is from, sent to us by the Sandwich Environment and Conservation Group, which has a lot of interesting resources listed. And I thought, rather than us talk, you know, each of us going away and in our own homes looking at these resources, I wondered if one person from this committee could perhaps take responsibility for looking at all this and coming back to us, having looked at these resources, with some recommendations for practical action, which the council could take. Councillor Marie.
If he's willing, I'd like to nominate Councillor Malik, because he's part of the Sandwich Conservation Group as it is.
Yes, I had actually written down Simon Malik.
I will accept.
So I propose Councillor Malik.
And I'll second that. So shall we all vote? And if Councillor Malik, you could look at all this stuff and come back with some practical, feasible suggestions, and we can talk about them at the next meeting. Yeah, that would be good. Thank you. And we also have this proposal for a moat park, which perhaps you could look at the same time, which is a very long-term project, I think, but something short-term would be, really helpful. Okay, the next item is the Sandwich Quay concept study, which has been a long time coming.
So, Councillor Anderson, so
Yes.
did you want Councillor Malik to be proposed to look at the Sandwich, or was that for a future?
Yeah, no, to look at it now and come back to us with a report to the next meeting.
So that's your proposal, sorry?
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
well,
Thank you.
I propose Councillor Theresa
I'll second that.
Thank you, you all vote.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
The key concepts study, and we do have some recommendations. And that the committee receives the report. The committee recommends that the report goes to full council at the meeting on the 26th of June 2023. The committee further recommends that full council establish a working group with co-opted representatives from the Heritage Harbour Group, the Port and Haven Commissioners and the town team to consider the report and the implications for Sandwich and Sandwich Town Council. I know that Councillor Gray is here and you've been involved with the development of this report. I don't know if you would like to make some comments about
Yes,
it.
I would like to make a statement, if I may. I'm passionate about the future of the quay and the river, because I think you all know it's a disgrace that we have currently, for most of the time, an abandoned empty quay, with the rest of the quay being a car park. It and the river have been neglected for too long, and whilst DDC's report is welcome, why have they sat on it for 2 years, not allowing any discussion whatsoever? The reason for the neglect of the river and the quay can only be laid at DDC's door, with the Port and Haven Commission sharing some of the blame. The operation of the quay remains 100% with its owners, who are Dover District Council, with the water under the control of the Port and Haven Commission. When I was a commissioner, I tried to initiate change, but without any success. I tried to get DDC to agree to hand over the day-to-day management of the quay to the Port and Haven Commission, and I opened negotiations with the Crown Estate, who were then keen to grant the Commission an overriding lease of the whole of the river from the entrance to the fordwich where navigation stops, so the Commission could take full control of the river in its entirety. There was unfortunately no appetite for this. No progress will be made without DDC's agreement, and a discussion must be opened with them and with all other relevant parties to find a way forward. A joint DDC STC committee needs to be established to undertake this, and I hope Councillor Morehouse, our new representative on DDC, may be able to facilitate this. Who knows, but with our now being able to use the general power of competence, maybe we can get together with other agencies to wrest control of the key from DDC so we can see it properly developed and used. It is, after all, the jewel in Sandwich's crown.
So you're suggesting, because the recommendation is that the working group have co-opted representatives from the Heritage Hub Group or the Hayes Commissioners and the town team, but you're suggesting it should include a representative from Dover District Council as well.
I think it must do.
The evidence must
Otherwise,
do.
we'll just be discussing amongst ourselves. Any decision has to be with DDC's agreement.
And this would be at officer level, are you suggesting?
I don't know. It could be officers, and it could be DDC councillors.
Councillor Anderson, my suggestion would be for DDC councillor, because we've seen in the past of working groups, we've invited officers to attend meetings and they haven't turned up.
Yeah.
So you saw the Guildhall working group last week. We invited 3 DDC officers and none of them turned up. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, the town clerk is sending me secret messages.
No, I was just DDC representative, Councillor Morehouse, and I just wrote down as well Roger Walton, who obviously came to the annual town meeting. He would be somebody that I think would be useful to approach.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, there are all sorts of very interesting things embedded in this report, and it, you know, the compromises that will have to be made are immense. I speak as a resident, as you know, adjoining the quay, and all my neighbours will say, what about our parking? And similarly, the Bell Hotel and the Drill Ball will say, what about our customers? So it is a very, very complicated issue. But it's interesting to see in the report itself that they do actually identify parking as a major issue and have put aside a little bit of space for parking. I mean, my response when people say that to me is, well, we'll have to have residence-only parking. And, you know, that might resolve it, but that's another whole other issue. So it is a very complicated
and it's a very good report.
It is, because they do identify all those issues.
I think a major issue is going to be dredging as well, isn't it? All them rebeds will take in out, don't they?
Yes.
And it's slowing the flow of water, so it's going to get worse and worse.
Yes.
It really dredging it clearer now.
Yes, it does, and that will cost an enormous amount of money. So I don't know, I have no idea.
But the more and more building they do at Ashford and Canterbury, it all comes down to through Sandwich. So perhaps they could do 106 money off all the count and produce it for environment to dredge the river out. So there's massive developments going on at Canterbury, isn't there?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, one thing that the reports was very good, however, we need to coincide the playground. We're still waiting for that money for Southern Water to do the playground. That must be included in the report.
Yeah.
And getting that pushed as soon as possible as well, because it needs doing.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I mean, they actually mentioned playground.
Yes, just on the playground, but then Councillor Rathway, in terms of the playgrounds, sorry, just to say that the money is with DDC and has been for a while.
Yeah.
So the issue is about unlocking it from DDC and their administration around projects and where the playground sits within that list. But the money was offered when it passed across the 4 years ago. So any small piece of work should not take 4 years, particularly when somebody else is willing to put some money towards it.
Can I just ask,
do we get interest on this?
No.
No, sorry, that money did not come from Southern Water until October last year.
Didn't it?
The reason being that Southern Water thought they'd already handed over their 30,000 that they promised to redevelop the park, because they had put extra money into the tennis courts and the allotments. But actually that was proven to be, it took a while, but it was proven to be completely separate. They had to dig those up, had nothing to do with giving back, if you like, something to the town. So, because we've pursued this for 3 years through the town team, so I also know now that when they put it on eventually got it onto the agenda at Dover District Council, they thought that the park should be upgraded to the sort of level that they have in Deal and up at Ash, and therefore that's best part of £1 million, or those two parks were. So now the park issue has gone on to a DDC agenda about parks and open spaces. The officer in charge of this at a DDC has actually written to me and told me that that will be discussed in ready for budgets in 2024. It may not happen in 2024, it may happen in 2025, but the park itself is now part of this bigger scheme, which I am a member of, and I've suggested that if they're going to do this, they speak to schools, children, whatever, because they need a lot more information. So whether or not that will go any further, I don't know, but I do know that the money in that came from Roger Mack and Darren Solly, because I asked them direct and he said, I can tell you the money has not come in, it's about to, and that was in October. So it is there now, but the query there is, they're quoting 15,000, I've got 30,000 on my minutes, so it is an issue. But if we just go back to Councillor Gray as well, in terms of the key, when I think about the time that it has taken to do anything with respect to the original vision for Sandwich, which was the Guildhall Square, I think we got more help by forging some communication links with some of the senior officers in KCC and DDC when we were looking at road layouts and so on. They were incredibly helpful and very supportive, and whether or not, if you're going to create this group, there will be a way of getting in there rather than dealing purely with some of the councillors. It does make a difference because they seem to sit and know nothing about Sandwich. And the Rummy report particularly picked up on the Quay and the Guildhall forecourt at the time, because they said there was no centre for Sandwich. The residents, visitors, no one could identify where the centre was. And in order to have a centre, a focal point that would attract shoppers and businesses, you needed to link the Quay to the Guildhall Square, and you needed to have proper access routes and signage so that they brought people through along the shopping areas and into the town. So it's a really important, in my opinion, really important plan that we should be knowing. I won't be around by the time it gets through, but knowing how long it took to do this.
Yes, well, thank you. I think.
Sorry, Councillor
Can I
Rose
not
Watson.
butt in perhaps? You say that I'm talking about dredging in the river, which it is a big part of it. I do know that Nadeem Aziz has had lengthy discussions with the Environment Agency about dredging, and this was a year ago now, and he was not unhopeful of getting the Environment Agency to agree to do some serious dredging, because if the Environment Agency can be persuaded that the silting of the river is a flood risk, then they will do something about it. And I think that is the avenue DDC were going down, which I think is goodwill. It would open the whole thing up.
Yes, well, I mean, the report itself does say priority number one is to talk to the Environment Agency about dredging.
Yeah.
And it sounds as though it would perhaps be helpful, but if Nadim Aziz himself was on this,
I think it would be. I think it would be
I
helpful.
mean, he is after all a resident of Stanbridge and the chief executive of the district council, so he could come to that.
Just briefly,
Yeah.
Chair, very, very briefly,
Yeah.
to back up what Carol George is saying, because obviously we've both sat on similar committees. In 2001, I was actually co-opted onto what was then the Sandwich Key Regeneration Group, and that's what actually got me onto the council in after that. And I was on this group they were mainly senior councillors from Sandwich Town Council, and they spent a lot of money having plans drawn up for the redevelopment of the quay, and they started, DDC said, oh okay, yeah, that's a good plan, but in order to do it, it would have to be match funded. And so they started to actually get match funding, and there is a small pot of money that is still ring fenced for the quay. But more importantly, the plans were done that was 2001, when I was on that group to redo the quay, and in particular was somebody called Dick Perry, Councillor Dick Perry, and a few of the other senior councillors. So you're talking about 22 years ago.
Well, let's hope this doesn't run into the sound as well. The curfew bell is going, and
Yes,
I think it's time to call it a halt. But I think these three recommendations, I would propose under recommendation 3 that the working group with cooperative representatives from the Heritage Harbour Group, the Port and Haven Commissioners, the Time Team, the District Councillor Mark Morehouse, and officers from DDC, including Roger Walton and possibly Nadim Aziz, as you know, if he's got this experience of dealing with the Environment Agency. So, can we take those recommendations en bloc, and who would like to, with my suggested amendment of these additions?
I'll propose to take them on block.
Anybody? Okay, who would second? Vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that the third recommendation is altered to take account of these additions from Dover District Council officers and councillors. Yeah. Okay. So the date of the next meeting is sometime next month.
10th of July.
The 10th of July.